You can hear them ripping down the drag strip here at Beacon Dragway. This was once an airport. Farrington Air Park is what they called this. And we're here for Rattoberfest 2023. This is the 14th annual. They started this in 2009. And it has become a monster car show here in the 4-state area, 5-state area, however many states you want to count. Lots of entries. I haven't even made it over to the main event yet, but what great cars. What great effort for these folks to put all these together and bring them out here. There's the Tri-5 Holy Grail. It's a 57 Chevy. This one says fuel injected. I haven't gotten close enough to see the engine, but boy, it's a nice looking ride. Mortsky Repair would call that a whiskey dent there about halfway down the fender. I call them a pride mark. That's the sign of a driver, somebody that gets around with it. Looks like a nice looking small block in there. You got Edelbrock, got all that chrome that won't get you home, but I'm telling you, it sure makes them look nice. Fuel injected. From the condition of the tires, I'd say this one's driven regularly. Cactus Jack here with Jimmy Burnham, and we're looking at this 57 Chevy, which is a pristine automobile, fuel injected, flags on the sides, the one I talked about with a whiskey dent. And Jimmy has got an awesome story about this automobile.
Yeah, this car actually was my dad's back in it was the last car that me and my dad worked on as together that I can remember working in his shop, and I went and pursued another avenue on work and was hired in with Distributor's Warehouse shortly after we did this car. And my dad passed away in 2000, and the day before he passed away, he had sold this car.
Wow.
And nobody knew that he had sold it. And it was about 2 weeks later, I was trying to get the shop open back up, of course, because my dad had passed away. And a gentleman had come in and asked if I was Jimmy Burnham, and I said, yes, sir. And he said he had some hard news for me, that, and I'm thinking, what could be harder than losing your father, you know?
Exactly.
And he said, well, I had bought the blue 57. And I said, oh, you didn't. I thought he was joking around, yeah. And he actually pulled the title out of his billfold and showed it to me.
There's Dad's signature.
Yeah, there was Dad's signature, and he hadn't told nobody. And he told me that my dad said that I would have a problem with him selling it because I always did love this 57 Chevy. Well, after years, I knew where it went. He lived close to us, but I just never knew the guy. But in the years after we had built a little bit of a relationship, I was working on a lot of his cars. And he told me one day, he said, you'll get your dad's car back. He said, I've got one I want you to paint. He said, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Well, 20 years later, he got killed in an auto accident. And he had no family here. So I had a friend of mine that got his daughter's phone number for me. And I called his daughter, and his daughter hooked me up with his sister who had took over the estate. And 20 years later, she come down from Florida and worked out a deal with me to get my dad's car back. It is a cherished item, I must say, and it'll never be for sale. It'll be passed on down to my kids, but it's just kind of astonishing that I got it back after 20 years.
Well, you know, I knew your dad. I admired your dad. He was one of the most interesting people I ever met. You want to tell us a little bit about how many irons he had in the fire, what he had under his hat when he wore one?
Well, my dad, he loved aviation. I mean, he just loved airplanes. He was building an airplane, and that's what was his demise. Everybody thought he would crash an airplane, but he was restoring a 1946 Taylor craft and was putting the bungee cords on the gear, and the plane fell off the wing stands and suffocated him. He couldn't get it off of him. And it's strange because if anybody was out there, he'd be here today, but his time was up.
And this is a caution to everyone who works alone in the shop. Be sure you've got a way to get help.
Yep, that's very true. Because like I said, if somebody else was there, if it was a kid, there's enough leverage on the wing that they could have went out to the end he would have got out from under it.
Your dad restored aircraft. He built some experimental aircraft,
Yes,
didn't
he did. He built some experimental.
The one that you see in all the videos that John Denver crashed in the ocean, I used to see that one fly over my house every day. And about the time John Denver passed away, I didn't see the airplane anymore. And I wondered a million times if your dad sold it to John Denver. I don't know if that's true or not, but it was.
No, it wasn't the same plane, but I know the plane you're talking about. He did have quite a few toys and planes and stuff that he just loved aviation. He loved it as much as he loved cars, and I think that he loved aviation more than he did love cars. But he was a very rounded man. He loved his God and his family, and he did have some hobbies. He loved cars and he loved aircraft.
Cars was his day job, but he did love the aircraft. That was his passion.
He did. And he loved giving people who'd never been a ride in there. That was one of his great things. If you never rode an airplane, he wanted to make sure he would take you up, not charge you or anything. He flew a lot of people on Metropolis. He gave them the first ride in an airplane.
The way I met him was my kids were little bitty. We used to go out and park at the fence and watch takeoffs and landing practice. And Jerry was almost always in the right-hand seat when we were watching that.
Yeah.
And there's countless people that I know that have learned to fly, and that's who taught them. That's who taught him to do it. He was a great guy. I don't know how old he was when he passed, but I know he passed.
He was 59. I am the same age he was when he passed. That's way young.
Jimmy. Burnham Collision Center on Highway 45 in Metropolis, Illinois, between the interstate and the big curve. Go by there, talk to him, and get the stories. Jimmy, thank you. We miss your dad, and I love the car, and I'm so glad you got it back.
Yeah, like I said, it's not going nowhere now.
God bless you, brother.